Imagine you, after a tiring day of work, arrive home and find an extremely expensive gift at the door, addressed to your wife, but the gift is not yours. At that moment, you discover that your wife is receiving gifts from a secret admirer. Gradually, you begin to realize that she may be having an affair. How would you deal with this betrayal? How would you react to discovering that the person you trusted the most is living a double life? It all started on a cold winter night when Mike found an elegant box at the door of his house. Thinking it was a mistake, he opened the box and found a dazzling diamond necklace with a note that said, "For the most beautiful of women." Intrigued, Mike took the gift to his wife, Linda, who was visibly disturbed to see the contents. He observed how her hands trembled as she held the necklace, and her eyes averted, avoiding direct eye contact. "Who is this from, Linda?" Mike asked, with a mix of confusion and concern in his voice. Linda hesitated, her voice faltering a little before answering. It's from a friend. She wanted to surprise me," she said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mike wanted to believe her, but something inside him knew there was more to the story than Linda was willing to admit. In the days that followed, more gifts began to arrive. Expensive perfumes, designer shoes, and even tickets to a luxurious resort. Each delivery seemed to increase the collection of secrets that was accumulating between Mike and Linda. He watched with a growing sense of discomfort as Linda always presented a new excuse for each item. "This perfume? Oh, it was an incredible deal I found online," she would say, or "These shoes were an early birthday gift from a colleague." The explanations were evasive and inconsistent, leaving Mike with a sense of unease that he couldn't ignore. On a quiet afternoon, while Linda was in the garden, Mike rummaged through some of the papers and found a thank you note signed only with the initial E. His heart sank. The doubts he had tried to push away now demanded his attention. What had once been just an uncomfortable suspicion was beginning to take the form of an undeniable reality. One day, when Linda went out for a get-together with friends, Mike decided to follow his wife. The route did not lead to a cafe or a restaurant, but rather to a luxury hotel in the other part of the city. Mike's heart was pounding as he drove, each kilometer increasing his nervousness and the feeling that he was about to discover something that could change everything. He parked the car in a discreet spot and waited, trying to control his breathing and the turbulent thoughts. After what seemed like an eternity, he saw Linda and an unknown man approach the hotel, laughing and conversing intimately. They didn't seem like just friends. There was a familiarity and intimacy in the way she touched his arm, the way they leaned in towards each other. Mike felt a pang of pain and betrayal as he took photos with his cell phone, the evidence that would confirm his worst suspicions. Consumed by a whirlwind of emotions, Mike decided to confront Linda. He waited until she returned home, and then, with a heavy heart, showed her the photos he had taken. Linda broke down in tears and confessed that the man was a former college classmate who had become a successful businessman. He just reappeared in my life a few months ago. I didn't know how to tell you," she sobbed, as Mike, with his eyes fixed on the photos, tried to absorb each word. "I tried to keep everything on a friendly level, but things got out of control," Linda continued, desperately trying to justify her meetings. Mike felt a mix of anger and desolation as he listened. The room was heavy with the sound of his broken heart and Linda's excuses, which seemed as fragile as the paper of the photos in his hands. Mike, devastated, didn't know what to do. In the following days, he sought advice from friends and pondered his options. In a final decision that would surprise anyone, he planned a meeting with his wife's lover to confront him face to face. The meeting, full of tensions and revelations, ended up leading to a dramatic and completely unexpected outcome. As Mike prepared for the meeting, he felt a mix of anger and a need for answers. The advice of his friends varied, but they all agreed that he needed clarity to move forward. In the cafe, his hands trembled slightly as he waited, each second stretching like hours. When Eric finally arrived, the air between them was charged with a tense electricity, a prelude to a confrontation that would define the future of all involved. The meeting took place in a discreet cafe. The lover, whose name was Eric, seemed confident until Mike introduced himself. The conversation that followed was tense, with Mike expressing his discontent and disillusionment, while Eric tried to justify his actions by claiming that he never intended to destroy a marriage. "I really thought she was separating," said Eric, trying to alleviate his conscience. Mike, however, was not seeking justifications, but rather to understand the depth of the betrayal. "How could you?" he questioned, his voice laden with disgust. Eric looked down, clearly uncomfortable. "I regret it, Mike. If I had known how much it would hurt you, I would never have continued," he responded, his voice a mix of remorse and defense. The meeting made it clear to Mike that Eric's excuses were not enough to heal the open wounds. During the dialogue, Eric revealed that he had known Linda since college and had always harbored feelings for her. The revelation was a hard blow for Mike, who realized that the encounters were not mere coincidences, but rather rooted in an unresolved history. "I have always loved her, since my university days," Eric confessed, his gaze lost in distant memories. "When we reconnected, it was as if not a day had passed." Eric's words were like knives in Mike's heart, each one eroding a little more of the trust he had in his wife. The conversation culminated with Eric apologizing and promising to never contact Linda again. But for Mike, the promises seemed empty, just words to the wind that could not rebuild what had been broken. Returning home, Mike found himself in a moral and emotional dilemma. He had a lengthy conversation with Linda, who begged for forgiveness, promising that it was all a mistake and that she was willing to do whatever it took to rebuild the marriage. "I swear, Mike, it was a terrible mistake and I deeply regret it," Linda said between sobs, her voice trembling with the weight of repentance. Mike, although shaken, decided to give love and the marriage one last chance, but with clear and strict conditions. "No more secrets, no more lies," he asserted, firm in his decision. "If we're going to try again, it has to be with total transparency." Linda agreed, relieved to have a second chance, but knowing that the path ahead would be difficult and full of challenges for both of them. In the months that followed, Linda cut off all contact with Eric and dedicated herself to rebuilding the relationship with Mike. They began to attend couples therapy, and gradually the marriage began to show signs of improvement. Each therapy session opened new doors to understanding and empathy, allowing them to share their insecurities and hopes. Linda was determined to be transparent in her actions, showing Mike all her messages and calls, a visible effort to rebuild the lost trust. Mike, although still wounded, began to see a light at the end of the tunnel, inwardly grateful for the resilience they were both demonstrating on this arduous but necessary journey to save what they had built together. However, the story took an unexpected turn when Mike received an anonymous letter. The letter contained recent photos of Linda and Eric together. The images showed the two of them in a local park, laughing and sharing a moment that seemed intimate and personal. The truth was that Linda had not completely severed the ties. Consumed by a new wave of betrayal, Mike confronted Linda with the photos, his face a mix of anger and disillusionment. "How could you continue to deceive me like this?" he asked, his voice laden with pain. Linda, taken by surprise and cornered, finally admitted that she had been weak and that her emotions for Eric still influenced her decisions. Mike knew he had to make a definitive decision, one that would change their lives forever. After a long night of conversations and tears, Mike decided that the path to reconciliation had come to an end. The trust, once broken, proved too difficult to rebuild. With a heavy heart and shattered trust, Mike confronted Linda with the new evidence. She, cornered, confessed that she had never been able to completely detach herself from Eric. This time, Mike made the painful but necessary decision to divorce. The process was difficult, but he knew it was the best path for his own sanity and recovery. During the divorce process, there were moments of deep sadness and intense reflection for both. Mike struggled with feelings of loss and betrayal, while Linda faced the guilt and remorse for her choices. In the end, Mike realized that true love should not be marked by lies and betrayals. Despite the pain, he felt free and ready to rebuild his life, wiser and more resilient. Linda, on the other hand, was left with the regret of her choices and the reality of having lost a man who truly loved her. The story of Mike and Linda ended in tears and goodbyes, but with a hard-learned lesson about the truth and the consequences of our actions. Linda moved to another city, seeking a new beginning, while Mike found comfort in hobbies and activities he had put aside, rediscovering himself and his ability to love again. And you, what would you do in Mike's place? Discovering that the person you love is receiving gifts from someone else, and even worse, is having an affair, is devastating. Comment below what you would do in this situation. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to continue following more stories like this one. I'll see you in a new story. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the new stories we receive anonymously to share with you.